Welcome to Pep Talk and Pickleball, the podcast where we explore empty nest life, health, fitness, and nutrition, all with a side of pickleball fun. I'm your host, Jill Lewis, your guide through this exciting phase of life. As a certified faster way to fat loss coach and fellow empty nester, I'm here to share insights, interview experts, and yes, sprinkle in some pickleball talk. Join me for weekly doses of motivation and laughter as we navigate health, happiness, and pickleball passion. Grab your paddle, join the conversation, and let's dive into Pep Talk and Pickleball. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Jill Lewis, and today I am joined by one of my best coaching buddies out there. This is Deidre Ferenc. She is coming from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I almost said Miami, but it's Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Since it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, I wanted to have Deidre on here to talk to all of us about breast cancer awareness because, unfortunately, she is a breast cancer survivor. And I think your story is very empowering now that we're on the other side of it. First of all, just thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited to be here. I feel honored that you asked me to be here.
Yeah. So Deidre is a faster weight coach, just like I am, and down in, South Florida. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
So yes, I live in South Florida. I was born and raised here. I am married to an emergency room physician, and we have two teenagers, a freshman and a junior. And I have been a faster weight coach for about 6 years now, just like you. I know you're one of the OGs, like me, or some of the OGs, and am just, really love spreading health and wellness and helping others. And when I got diagnosed with breast cancer just over 2 years ago, just kind of incorporated that as part of my story and another way to spread awareness and give people, tips and guidance on how to be healthy and why prioritizing our health always needs to be a priority and always needs to be on our to-do list and at the forefront of, our lives.
For sure. I mean, if you don't mind, can you take us back to that? I mean, it was such an awful time, I know, for you. I'm sure you don't love focusing on that, but I mean, it had to be such a shock for you. Was it something that, does this run in your family at all? Did you have any relatives that had breast cancer?
Yes, I did. And it still was a shock because I was, in my early 40s. I was probably the healthiest, the strongest, the leanest, I had been in most of my adult life. When I was told I had breast cancer, it was like someone literally sucker punching me, right in the face.
Did you feel something, or did you have a mammogram that came back wonky?
So let me go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Back in 2016, when I was at a regular OBGYN visit for, a yearly checkup with my gynecologist, he said, Deidre, you have a history of breast cancer and ovarian cancer in your family. I have a grandmother, my mother's mother, who had breast cancer at the age of 50. Had a single mastectomy because back then, they didn't really do bilaterals, if you had cancer, and then got breast cancer again at the age of 80 in the other breast and ended up having to undergo another mastectomy. And she went on to live into her 90s. I mean, she went on to live a full life. And then my other grandmother on my father's side, she died in her early 70s of ovarian cancer. So my gynecologist knew my family history. And so it was just at an appointment where he was like, why don't we do some genetic testing on you? Let's find out if there's actually a gene that runs in your family. And I had heard of BRCA testing before, people are very familiar with what BRCA is, but there are actually dozens and dozens of other genes that you can carry. It's not just BRCA anymore.
Really?
So that is what he wanted me to have done. He wanted me to have a full genetic panel. It was one vial of blood that they took out of my arm. And at the time, he said, sadly, I don't think your insurance company is going to cover it, but it was around $250 out of pocket. And
oh, yeah.
I said, I think it's worth it. Let's do it.
I mean, first of all, what a great doctor.
I know. Yeah. You
That's
have to
awesome.
really, I mean, luckily he was being very proactive with me. We got the results back a few weeks later and he called. I found out that I actually carry a genetic mutation. It's called PAL-B2. So
Okay.
PAL, the letter B, the number 2, it's kind of like the cousin to BRCA.
Okay.
Um, and it put me at a much higher risk for breast cancer. And then it also had a component that put me at an elevated risk for ovarian cancer and even a slightly elevated risk for pancreatic cancer.
Oh my gosh.
So I, at 37 years old, found out that I carried this gene and I had this risk. And, you know, I was upset about it, but I also felt, you know what, this is going to allow me to be more proactive. Now
Mhm.
that I know I have a higher risk, I can start being more proactive. So my doctor actually sent me to see a breast oncologist because he wasn't sure what the protocol was, you know? So he had me go see a breast oncologist. I did. And basically at that point, what she said is, you're going to start getting mammograms, which I had never had before. You're going to start getting breast MRIs, which I certainly had not had, and you're going to start getting ultrasounds. And she said, and we're going to screen you every 6 months
Oh,
with
wow.
rotation of those screenings. I wasn't going to get every one every 6 months, but there would be like a rotation where I would be able to get those screenings. And so this is where I feel like knowledge is so powerful because I was able to be more proactive. I was able to start screening. I didn't have to fight with my insurance company over screenings because we knew I had this genetic mutation. And I, was able for the next several years to kind of be on top of
Right.
what was going on. And I luckily was getting checked every 6 months. And that is what led to the discovery many years
Mhm.
later of my breast cancer. I was actually at a routine visit with my breast oncologist, and she was doing my breast exam. And when she was doing it, she felt 2 lumps in my left breast. And she took my fingers and she put them on the 2 lumps. And she said, "Do you feel this?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Sadly, I was not doing my self exams every month. I should have
Mhm.
been, but I wasn't. And that was kind of what, started my breast cancer journey.
Oh my gosh. So she feels those and then you immediately go in for imaging, I'm guessing.
Yep.
And did the imaging, it shows it right away, just with a traditional mammogram? Is that what?
Actually, my mammogram did not show it. I have dense breasts, which
Okay.
I think 42% of women have dense breasts.
I always hear that when I get my mammogram.
Yeah.
It says something, you have dense, tissue or whatever.
Yeah. And that makes it harder to see cancer on a mammogram because on mammograms, your breast tissue shows up white, and
Hmm.
many times cancer tumors can show up like white. So it blends in and it makes it harder to see. So I went the very next week after she found those 2 lumps. I had
Hmm.
a mammogram and I had an ultrasound. My mammogram was clear. It did not see anything, but the ultrasound confirmed that I had 2 masses that needed to be further investigated. So that then led to a biopsy.
And then when you have a biopsy, like what is that? I mean, you have to be a nervous wreck, but does that painful? Like explain what the biopsy is like.
You're definitely a nervous wreck. It's an ultrasound guided biopsy. So, there is an ultrasound tech like doing an ultrasound on your breast while a
Hmm.
doctor is sticking a needle in and trying
Hmm.
to get a piece of those masses. They do numb you up. I mean, they shoot you with a numbing substance.
Hmm.
You feel kind of pressure. You do
Yeah.
feel. Wasn't anything that I found to be super, super painful. Um,
Hmm.
I did bruise,
Hmm.
afterwards, about a week, half of my breast was black and blue.
Hmm.
But the procedure itself is just, it's just scary. Like you don't
Yeah,
want to do it if
absolutely.
you don't know. And then you're on pins and needles waiting for them to look at what they took out and tell you what it is. So I think that
Oh
in
my gosh.
itself is
Yeah.
like the
How
worst part.
long did you have to wait for after the biopsy to hear back?
Luckily, I only had to wait a few days. I think the fact that my husband is a physician and in the
Mhm.
medical field and knew a lot of my doctors and where I had my biopsy was the hospital that he had worked at for 20 years. So, obviously
Yeah.
people in the lab. So we were able to get a little bit of a rush put on
Hmm.
everything. So I only had to wait a couple of days. But I'll never forget, it was my gynecologist who
Hmm.
made that phone call and basically called me on I think it was a Wednesday afternoon. I was sitting right here at the exact
Oh,
spot I'm sitting. I was at my desk. I was working. We were leaving the very next morning to go on our family ski trip for spring break.
oh,
He called and just said, it's not good. And
oh,
the next thing you hear is you have breast cancer. And then you just, your world just, for lack of a better word, it like collapses in a matter of seconds. Like I was
yeah.
trying to write what he was saying. I was trying to write down the type of cancer, but my hand was shaking and I couldn't write. And you kind of like, everything kind of goes blank and blurry for a few minutes. So
Oh my
it was,
gosh.
it was not a fun phone call to receive.
And then you went on, then you had vacation with your kids. Did you tell them?
No, I went and told my husband.
Hmm.
And I said, we still need to go on this trip. I mean, we look forward to our family ski
Yeah.
so much. The kids just love it. We were going with other families. And I said, I want to go, but I don't want to tell the kids. Like, we need to, because they were younger at the time. And
If that doesn't just, oh, I'm gonna cry saying it. If that doesn't describe motherhood,
yep,
I don't know what else does. I mean, that is like what you do as a mom. You're like, I don't want to ruin my kids' vacation and spring break over my cancer diagnosis. I mean, but that's what that's
it's so
literally
true.
what we do. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So
But we,
then tell us, I mean, I know it's so painful to talk about, but I just think it's so important sharing with women. Like, so you get the diagnosis and you were at what was the stage of your
I was
cancer?
stage one.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so I think I remember this correctly. You had a mastectomy. Yes,
I
both
did.
sides.
About a month later,
Okay.
I now at this time when the doctor called, they don't know it's stage one.
Okay.
It had to go in for an MRI next, but I couldn't do
Oh,
that until I got back from
your
my
trip.
ski trip. So I went on my ski trip. I was on the phone every day out there, scheduling appointments, talking to doctors, setting everything up. And when I got back, I literally like hit the ground running with everything that you have to do, like appointment. I think I had 1 week where I had 9 or 10 appointments in 1 week with different.
Oh my gosh. Didn't you sit your kids down? You're like, kids, I need to talk to you. And didn't your son say, like, guess it right away what was going on?
He did. It was actually kind of ironic. We were on the ski trip and I had called a friend of mine who is also another faster way coach, but
Mhm.
she's also a breast cancer PA. She's a PA, she works with a breast cancer surgeon. And so I had, called her or while I was on that trip and she actually called me back as I was getting on a ski lift and I wanted to take her call. So I like pushed my son ahead, like, and was like, get on the lift. I'm going to take the next one,
Mhm.
and we were with other people. He wasn't alone, but like,
Right,
I
right.
got on the next one and he's like, why? What's wrong with you? I'm like, it's just a friend of mine. I have to talk to her. And he literally goes, what's wrong? You have cancer or something? Like, it was just bizarre. And I mean, I guess he was like 11.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
just like the weirdest thing for him to
Yes.
say. Like, it just goes to show you, I don't know what he had maybe already heard or seen over the
Yeah.
few days prior, but yeah,
He
he,
had picked up there was something in
yeah,
the atmosphere that he was picking up
yeah.
on for sure.
And then
Oh,
we didn't end up telling them for a
uh-huh.
few weeks later because, in fact, I didn't tell anyone in my family. because I wanted
You
to
wanted all the
have my
facts.
plan. I wanted to know all the info. I wanted to know what I was doing. There are so many decisions you have to make when you get diagnosed with cancer, and
Mhm.
you do want opinions and you do want help, but then you also don't want opinions,
100%.
you know?
Yeah.
So I wanted to know exactly what we were looking at, what I was dealing with, and what my treatment plan was before I told the family. So
I get that.
we kind of waited. It was a couple of weeks before we ended up telling the kids, as well as my parents and my siblings and everything else.
So you make the decision to have the mastectomy. So you have both breast removes. You did, by the way, she had reconstructive surgery and they look phenomenal. I mean, they
Thank you.
really do. But then it was kind of heartbreak again. So you had that surgery, which is huge, just to go through that. And then for someone as active as you to like not be able to not be active after, I mean, that's major, major surgery.
Yes.
To go through that. And then you were hopeful that you wouldn't have to do chemo, but you got some more bad news. So take me through that.
Yep. I say getting diagnosed with cancer was like getting punched in the face. And then finding out that I was going to have to go through chemo was like getting punched in the gut a few seconds later, because it was stage 1, you know,